What if the reason you still feel stuck is not because you haven't tried hard enough, but because you've been trying to heal in a way your body was never designed to? What if talking about your pain without feeling safe in your body is actually keeping the cycle going? And what if the breakthrough you're looking for is not found in more words, but in something much deeper? Welcome to the It's Your Story to Tell podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm your host and the founder of It's Your Story to Tell. This podcast exists to share stories that help you get curious about your own and inspire you to take action. Our hope is simple, that when you listen, you will take one step closer to who you were created to be. We share stories of hard things and how people walk through them with the goal to help you feel safe enough to be honest about your own story. Because honesty is where healing begins.
Are you tired of repeating the same patterns, feeling stuck in your story, and wondering if real change is even possible? In my book, Unstuck, Break Free from What's Holding You Back and Create a Life You Love, I walk you through the path from survival to transformation, blending faith, neuroscience, and soul deep healing. This book, it's not just words on a page. It's a companion for your journey. Whether you've experienced trauma or just feel lost in the noise of life, Unstuck will meet you there with truth, compassion, and tools that actually work. It's time to stop surviving and start living your story with purpose. Grab your copy today on Amazon.
There were years where I sat in counseling and I felt stuck. Not because counseling is not helpful, not because going to counseling is wrong, but because something deeper was not being accessed. Week after week, I would show up, sit there, talk about what happened that week, the conflict, frustration, my emotions. And yes, those things mattered, but they were not the root. If I'm honest, I didn't know, or maybe I didn't even want to admit that there was trauma in my story that was at the root of what I was experiencing. So I stayed focused on the surface. And when I would leave those sessions, sometimes I left feeling more activated, overwhelmed, and worse than when I walked in. But I kept going. I kept pushing through. I really wanted to break free. I really wanted to feel joy and fulfillment and meaning in my life. But honestly, inside, I was breaking. And where I was at in these counseling appointments was not helping me. I didn't know at the time what I know now. And that's why I'm sharing this story, because maybe you have experienced something similar. And what I found in my own life was that traditional talk therapy that's focusing on thoughts, insights, and processing was not effective for me in that moment breakthrough that I was desiring because of what was going on in my nervous system and my body and the way my brain was responding. I wasn't able to process in a way that was effective. Trauma lives in the body and it shows up in our psychological responses and not just our thoughts. So when you're activated, meaning triggered by something, someone says something, you have an experience that causes your heart to race, you may feel sick to your stomach, you may want to shut down. There's different ways that we respond. You may know this as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And these are just states that your body shifts into without you even consciously thinking about it. This is all happening in the subconscious brain, and it's all with the goal of surviving. So when you are in survival mode, you are not able to access your logical thinking brain, which means you can't fully process or integrate what it is that you're talking about. In talk therapy, when I wasn't paying attention to my nervous system and being able to learn skills to help me calm my nervous system so that I could process effectively, I was just reliving it. And so that was making it worse for me, and why I would leave feeling more activated, overwhelmed. And this was my body just trying to protect me. But I didn't understand that. And it was a missing piece for me when I started to understand that until the body feels safe, we are not going to be able to go to that deeper level of understanding to gain clarity and be able to make that aligned decision. Instead, we're living caught in this cycle. And I felt like that. I felt I was living on a hamster wheel, and it was really tiring and exhausting, just like that little hamster that's running and running, but it's getting nowhere. And that's how I felt. When I started to understand the power of getting curious about what was I experiencing in my body, in my mind, what were my thoughts about, it was amazing how I could sit and be present with these uncomfortable feelings and learn from them. And there's a lot of research that talks about curiosity and how it helps to regulate our body. And when we are being curious, we aren't reliving it if we can start looking at it almost like you are a reporter, a private investigator, uh, a doctor, a nurse, who's trying to understand what is at the root. And so when you put on that hat of uh, investigator, you can look at things without being so attached to the experience. And that's what allows us to explore things further into what is the root of this experience. So, for example, if you are feeling activated in a conversation and you start to get curious about why am I feeling activated, and you're asking yourself why, helps you to understand maybe that I'm feeling activated because I don't feel like this person's listening to me. And there were times in my life when I was younger and I was struggling with something and I wanted to be heard, and no one was listening. Then when we can sit and be present with that feeling that came from the past, and that we can show up for ourselves in a way that repairs. And until we can understand that, we actually can't change it. I used to think if I could just change my thoughts, I would change my life. And yet that wasn't working. And talking about it wasn't working. But when I was able to stop avoiding what I was feeling, so instead of just immediately going into a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, if I chose, you know what, I'm going to ask a question here about what am I experiencing, it would break that cycle and allow me to continue to get curious, ultimately leading me to a place where I could make a calm and clear decision on how to move forward. And in the past, I would spend time judging myself, being critical, trying to please other people. And that was not getting the outcome that I was desiring and that I was actually trying really hard to achieve. I could not talk myself out of my experience. I needed to understand it. I needed to be able to show up for myself because doing that helped me to build safety with myself. So in the past, when I didn't feel safe because something hard happened, I wasn't able to process it because I didn't have support. That became a trauma that continued to impact me. When I can be present with my pain and when I can get curious about what it is trying to teach me or reveal to me, then I have understanding and can make a better decision on how to move forward and not keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results.
What if your breakthrough wasn't found in striving, but in walking? What if clarity, healing, and direction came not in the hustle, but in quiet, intentional steps led by the Spirit? Sacred Pathways is a monthly walking mentorship designed to align your body, soul, and spirit with the wisdom of God. Each month, you'll receive 12 walking lessons. These are short teachings designed to be experienced on the move. You'll also get one live group session and access to a community of women committed to walking in purpose. This is more than a routine, it's a rhythm of renewal, a sacred invitation to process life with God, one step at a time. If you're hungry for deeper intimacy with the Lord, clarity in your calling, and healing that moves through your whole being, this is your path. Join Sacred Pathways and start walking in wisdom today. Now enrolling on itsyourstorytotell.com.
What I discovered is as I got curious, I had trauma in my life. And I had not wanted to see that. I didn't want to acknowledge, admit it, or talk about it because I just wanted to deny it and move on. And sometimes trauma, it can be a big trauma. We think of abuse, from sexual abuse, to physical abuse, emotional abuse. It could be somebody who said something about an outfit that you were wearing, and it really caused you to question your own identity when you were younger. Or a teacher who said something about a project you were working on, and it made you feel like, I can't be who I wanted to be. Their words then created a narrative that is or was preventing you from becoming who you truly desire to be. So we want to take a minute and say, is trauma or really hard emotions that I haven't been able to process keeping me stuck? And our body tells us that there's something here when we become activated. Just like if you've heard me talk in previous podcasts where we're talking about activation, your check engine light comes on, and it could be a lot of different things. It's just alerting you that there is a problem here. Now we have to figure out what is the problem. Some symptoms, signs and symptoms that may point to a traumatic experience under the surface could be feeling anxious or on edge often, overthinking about conversations and replaying situations. I did that all the time. If you struggle to feel safe in relationships, meaning you don't feel like you can be honest with the person or ask for your needs to be met because of the way they might treat you or respond to your requests. And so a result of that can often be people pleasing and avoiding conflict. So You don't have to engage with that person in a way that feels very threatening to you. Sometimes we shut down and just feel emotionally numb. Maybe you're just feeling overwhelmed and you don't know why. Remember, these are just signals. They're trying to ask you to get curious. They're saying something's going on here. And when we stop and pause and ask questions, then we can get answers. Some of the nervous system response, fight is looking like irritability or control. That was something often for me. I wanted to control things. I wanted them to look a certain way, be a certain way, because that is what allowed me to feel safe. I also would stay very busy. That was a way for me to deal with my anxiety. It's like if I was going very fast and doing things, cleaning or organizing, performing at work, all of these things would keep my mind off of how I was feeling in my body. And yet that didn't make it go away. And then freeze is shutting down, disconnecting. I would do this sometimes when I felt like if I speak up, the relationship will end. It valued relationship and wanting that at all cost. And so often I would silence my voice in order to ensure that I didn't lose the relationship. Or I would shut down and disconnect if I had asked someone to show up in a certain way, but then they were unable to. And after a few times of trying to ask and explain myself without success, or maybe it was painful, I would just stop asking and I would disconnect from that in order to try to keep the peace. I think of fawning as just trying to be whatever you need to be in that moment in order to survive and to keep the peace. And oftentimes in this, we are losing connection with ourselves. We really don't have connection with the other person either because we're not being honest, we're not being authentic, and you can't have a healthy relationship when that is the environment. And these responses, they were learned and they are your body's way of trying to protect you. Now, sometimes these symptoms they get really bad and we have to see a doctor, a psychologist, someone to help us diagnose what it is that we're experiencing. And oftentimes that can feel like relief. Yay, I now know what it is that I'm going through. And you can sometimes get medication or get different types of supports in order to give yourself the best chance at healing and moving through these things. But a diagnosis alone does not get us better. It doesn't allow us to experience the joy and fulfillment that I believe that God wants all of us to be able to walk in. Even when things are hard, we can still have that joy and fulfillment. So this is important to me because I think we need to have a holistic approach. It's not that counseling wasn't working or was bad. It was just where I was at, it was not helping me to move forward. And so when we can recognize when we're stuck and something's not working, we can try new things. And so going to a doctor, going to a psychologist, getting a diagnosis, taking medication, but then looking at the power of how you show up for yourself. That's how you take care of yourself. Are you getting the sleep that you need? Are you getting the movement that your body needs? Are you eating in a way that supports your energy? Or are you turning to sugar? That's one of my things. I love chocolate. Stress, I wanted chocolate and comfort food. And I also liked to have wine at night with dinner and just kind of unwind and, Netflix and chill. And for me, what God was showing me is those were all ways of coping with my feelings and emotions. And I wasn't really dealing with them. And so God called me to stop drinking alcohol. And wasn't really something that I wanted to do because I thought, I don't really have a problem with this. It's just something we do and I enjoy it. And I had all kinds of reasons as to why. But when I stopped, I realized that every time I wanted to go and have a drink, well, I won't say every time, most of the time, because sometimes it was on a date night with my husband, and that's something that I do miss. But for me, I couldn't just have the drink on that date night and not want to have it at home at the end of a busy day. And so for me, I had to say, I can't do that because I want to show up for myself, care for myself in a way that expands my capacity so that I can sit with the things that I'm trying to avoid and move my life forward. One of the programs that I teach is called Sacred Presence. And sacred presence is how we show up for ourselves and how we can show up for others. And oftentimes we want to talk in order to solve things in our own mind, but often also we're trying to support and help others. And oftentimes that is not what people need. Wasn't talk therapy for me. What I really needed to learn was how to show up and be present with myself, and now I have learned and I get to teach how we do that and show up for others in a way that allows them to get curious and ask hard questions in an environment where there is safety. So instead of talking and fixing and analyzing, we're choosing presence. And this can be so awkward and so hard because of the discomfort of sitting in someone's pain or sitting in your own pain, but it is life giving. And presence, the way that God showed me was to show up for myself or for others with the fruits of the Spirit. So, love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. And you know what? As I've learned more and more about the nervous system, that is what regulation looks like, right? Dysregulation is when we're anxious, our heart's beating fast, our mind is going 100 miles an hour. It does not look like peace, look like self control or gentleness. What we're doing when we show up in that way for ourselves is that we're regulated. And when we do that for someone else, that's called being able to be a co-regulator. So if you have children, you know that we as parents are powerful co-regulators. And we can do that with more than just our words. In fact, our words, if our body language do not match up, are not effective. So when we can sit and we can hold our crying child and we can just be with them in that moment without offering a solution. And this was really hard for me, and something that I had to learn, and it's something I've had to practice when it comes to my kids or even being a coach, because I like to solve problems. That's what I love a good problem and coming up with a process and a way to achieve the desired outcome. But this is often not what people need, especially not early on when they are activated. They need someone to sit with them and help them to calm. And we can do that through our tone of voice, our facial expressions, our body language, just our energy and that contributes to the presence that can bring down their own activation and create safety in that space so that they can calm and then they will have clarity. Daniel Siegel, he's a researcher in interpersonal neurobiology, and he talks about how our nervous system is wired to respond to each other. And I bet you can think about a time that you walked into someone's presence and without them saying anything, you already could tell they were tense or anxious just because their energy. We want to not bring that presence into our own personal experience or when we are walking alongside someone who's going through something hard. And this is very counterintuitive. So it's something that you will have to practice. But when you can bring this type of presence into a situation, you activate safety in the body. And when the body feels safe and the nervous system can calm from that activated state, you can process, you can understand, and then you can choose how to move forward in a way that isn't chaotic or non effective. And this is where we move from healing to being able to create a life that you love. If you have felt stuck, you have an opportunity to change that. And all it takes is a different approach. I want you to try 3 questions. Why do I feel this way? And if you can ask why multiple times, 3 to maybe 5 times, it's going to help you to have a better understanding of what's truly going on. Because sometimes we feel angry, but really what's happening is we are experiencing rejection. And if you can understand that you are experiencing rejection, when you ask the second question, what do I need right now? You can think through ways to show up for yourself to meet that experience with compassion. And that will help you to reduce the activation because you're choosing to show up in a way that is loving and kind. Or you might say, okay, where was the first time I remembered that I felt rejected? And that's going to give you more insight because if this is something rooted in an experience in childhood, you have to go back and process through that, not just the experience that's happening with this person right in front of you. So, why do I feel this way? What do I need right now? And then how can I take one step forward? That's my goal in all of these podcasts as you are listening to people's stories that you might find yourself in your experience and have an idea of something that you can do to move yourself forward. We know what we need. It's just a matter of, are we willing to really admit it? Because sometimes we've been so disappointed by others in having our needs met that we feel very vulnerable and scared that if I say what I need, then somebody is not going to show up in that way and I'm going to be hurt and more disappointed. And that is true. That will happen. We live in a broken world. But what if you can show up for yourself in a way that supports you even when others disappoint you? then you don't get stuck and you're able to continually walk through this process and find out what it is that you need, how you can show up for yourself, and how can you move forward. So you're not avoiding, you're not shutting down, you're getting curious, and those insights are leading you to where you want to be. And that was the problem with me when I was sitting in counseling. I wasn't being honest. I wasn't willing to look at what was below the surface at that point, and I didn't have the skills of how to show up for myself and regulate my body and my mind so that I could keep asking the deeper question. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you will have an opportunity to try this out in the near future and see how it works. If you try it out, I would love to hear from you and know if having three simple questions to help you when you are activated is powerful in moving your life forward. Thanks for being here with me. And I hope you'll remember that your story matters, not just the easy parts, but the parts that you have avoided, because those parts, they hold the information that leads you to healing. And when you meet yourself with presence instead of pressure, everything begins to change. If this resonated with you today, take one step. Just start with a pause. Notice what you feel in your body and get curious instead of pushing it away. If you're ready to go deeper, I'd love to support you through It's Your Story to Tell. And we have lots of free resources on our website under the Transformation Academy, and you can start there. We also have coaching available. If that is something that would be helpful so that you can have someone who can walk alongside of you and offer you that presence that will help you to regulate so that you can continue to get curious and move forward in your life. If you know someone who's struggling, maybe share this with them. Thanks so much for being here with me today.